Now, Lisa, so she got you started talking about the cost of care, and most of us don't know that Medicare doesn't cover everything, but it sounds like you guys already have figured that out. And so the big mistake that many of us make throughout our lives is that we don't plan for this other kind of care that Medicare doesn't cover. It's called custodial care. And we need help with that type of care more than many of us think. And so custodial care is when you need some help, maybe remembering to take your medications, or to take a shower is one of the first things that I see, because we've all figured out that it's slippery, it's wet, and we know at this point in our lives that if we fall, that's not going to be a good result. We don't heal the same way we did when we were a child and we fell and scraped up our knees and stuff, right? So it's a much more detrimental impact on us as we age to fall, because we break things easier and that we don't heal as well. So we're a little bit skeptical about getting into that wet, slippery shower in order to get ourselves clean without maybe some oversight at some point. Plus we get a little bit less stable as we go through life. So those are the kinds of things that we need someone to come in and help us with, or have a family member. How many of you helped your family members, maybe your parents, as they aged? Many of you, right? Now, do you think your kids are going to be able to do that for you? Some are saying yes, some are saying no. I hope so. It doesn't work out too well unless you talk to them. The kids, they're busy with their own lives, and it's not something that they planned on. Years ago, not that long ago, parents didn't both work, and so someone could help take care of the grandparents, etc. Where today, with both parents working most of the time and trying to raise children, etc., it's more difficult. When you need help with showering, getting out of bed, getting dressed, maybe even personal hygiene or taking medications, doing your bills, those are things that are not considered medical expenses, and so that's where Medicare doesn't cover it. That's what Lisa was talking about, that you can, really have some significant bills whenever you need that kind of help. How many of you know somebody that has dementia? Oh my gosh, everybody, right? It is becoming what I feel like is an epidemic. I see it more and more every day. And any kind of cognitive impairment is typically a long-term illness. It usually will last for 10 to 13 years after you're diagnosed. I had the honor of talking to a couple ladies a few weeks ago that were diagnosed in their early 50s. So they had what's called early onset. We don't see that too often, but we do see many of us as we get into our late 60s and into our 70s that we do have some type of dementia. And what happens with dementia is that as we go through and progress with the disease, at first we don't really remember things as well. I don't know about you guys, but I've been asked the same question several times, just like I call Lisa Linda. I work with her every day, right? But it progresses to even more than that, where you can't do a lot of things that you do now every day. And you need some help with those things. And somebody becomes almost a full-time caregiver in providing that care pretty quickly. I had a family a couple of weeks ago that was in, and I'll just call them Emily and Paul, but Emily at 69 was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a form of dementia. And at 69, she was just a little bit, didn't remember things a little bit, but could still be very independent. And so they didn't think much of it. Well, fast forward a few years, by the time she was 72, so 3 years later, Paul's had to do a lot of stuff around the house that he never planned on doing, because she can't do the laundry anymore, she can't do the housekeeping. She can't cook meals because she can't remember how to do that, and she actually has started a couple fires in the pans, and so, that job was taken away from her. She can't drive anymore. Plus, people, when they get dementia, start to get very paranoid and scared, because it's a very scary illness that your brain starts thinking differently. So Paul was having to take over a lot of the stuff that she used to do, plus of course all of the stuff that he used to do. And so this is where they decided to move into one of the 55 plus communities that you see around. And the advantage of those is that you don't have to do any of the outside maintenance. Somebody does that for you. Now, of course, you pay for that in your HOA, but inside the house is really what you're responsible for. And a lot of them have someone that'll come in and even change a light bulb and do that type of thing for you. And so they moved into a 55 plus community, and at this time they're about 72, 73 years old, so still what I consider pretty young. And Emily just kept getting a little bit worse, where she couldn't be left alone by herself. And a lot of people will ask me, well, how do you know when that happens? If someone has dementia and they wouldn't know how to get out of the house if there was a fire, or what to do if some, emergency happened at the house, then they're like a child, a very young child, and should not be left home alone. So Paul couldn't go anywhere without her. By the time he came into my office, he was just really exhausted and devastated. So he decided to hire some home care, which you could get, to come in and help take care of Emily. Now, if you belong to a church or have a good support system, you'll usually get a few people to help with that, but when you have to pay for it, it's about $25 an hour. So he started out having him come in a few hours a week, so at least he could go to the grocery store without Emily, because she had become incontinent, and it just makes things more difficult. So here she is, 73 years old, and really can't take care of herself. Well, he needed more and more time for that, and at $25 an hour, you can run up quite a bit of expenses. The next thing, then, they decided to move into an assisted living, and you've seen a lot of the assisted livings around, and they usually start out about $4,000 a month. So you can see where this is just very costly. And they lived in the assisted living for a while, but then Emily needed to go to memory care. So she moved there, Paul stayed in the assisted living, but ultimately she did have to go to a nursing home, which is very common for someone that has cognitive impairment. We all like to think that we're going to be able to continue at the same capacity and abilities that we have today, right? Nobody wants to think, well, gosh, at some point I'm not going to be able to do these things for myself. But in reality, we all know that things deteriorate as we get older. The body just can't keep up as the mind sometimes can, but sometimes the mind can't either. Well, they ended up throughout her life spending over $800,000 just on her care. And that was a lot of money that they had not planned for. But I'll tell you, if they had come in to see us earlier, one of the things that we're really great at is protecting assets so you don't spend so much money on this custodial care. And you're probably thinking, well, how do we do that? And we use tools called trusts. You've probably heard of trusts, but you don't really know exactly how it works in this capacity. But how many people have a trust? Okay, a couple of you. And I'm not going to ask you to answer this, but think about what kind of trust you have and what did you get it for? What's it supposed to do? Because I run into people that have trust, but they're not really sure why they got it or what kind of trust it is or what it accomplishes. I'm going to tell you about two primary different types of trust. One is called a revocable trust. And with that one, it's usually called a living trust as well. I want you to think about a trust as a treasure chest. And so you can put assets into the treasure chest, and if you have a living trust, what that does is helps you to avoid probate court and to manage your finances and control your assets even after you pass away. So if I have somebody in my life that I don't want to give a chunk of money to, maybe I want them to wait until they're 35 or 40, or maybe I want to give them a little bit at a time, I can do that with a trust. With a will, when I pass away, everything gets distributed as of what it is that day. But I can put more stipulations on things with a trust. So the one kind of trust is a living trust. You have a treasure chest, you put some assets in there, and you have the key to the treasure chest. So you're the trustee. You get to do whatever you want to do as long as you have a capacity and as long as you're alive. The other kind of trust is called an asset protection trust. Some people call it an irrevocable trust, and some of them are irrevocable. Now, irrevocable means you can't change it, right? We all know that. The trusts that we do that are considered irrevocable are revocable. You can't change everything about them, and that's why they're asset protection trusts. So the way that they work is you put some assets in the trust. You can't have the key. You need to have a family member or somebody else that you have a lot of confidence in to have that key. But then those assets that are in there are protected from whatever happens to you in the future. So let me give you an example. I have an asset protection trust. I have 4 children, one that I trust a lot. We all try to raise good children, right? But it doesn't always work out that way. So you got to have a good child for this, or somebody good. So I have one child that is my trustee. And so my husband and I put our house into this treasure chest or asset protection trust. And my son, Josh, has the key to that treasure chest. Now, while my house is in there, I've sold my house, I bought another house, all still within that treasure chest. I could do just about anything that I want to do with the things that are in the treasure chest. But right now, I only have my house in there. And the reason I have my house in there is because if my husband or I get really sick and we need a lot of care, could we get some napkins, please? If we need a lot of care that's going to be very expensive, I really want each of us to get all the care that we need. Whatever that costs, I'm willing to spend everything we own on that. But at the end, when one of us passes away, I don't want the other one to be destitute. And I've seen this happen with many couples, that one person will get sick. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, we don't all work on the same timetable. So we don't all get sick at the same time. We don't require the same type of care. So if my husband gets really ill and needs all this care, I'll spend everything else. But at the end of it, I don't want to be living in my child's basement, and I don't want to be destitute. So with my house in the trust, the value of my house is protected from whatever else happens. You with me so far? Okay. You don't need to put everything into the trust. So, like my checking account's not in the trust, my car's not in the trust. I have a savings account that has some money because I still want to do, some traveling or things that are fun. So I don't want everything to be in the trust. But you can put more things in the trust than just your house. Now let me tell you about a benefit called Medicaid. Anybody heard of that? That benefit will help you. Pardon me?
Every week.
Every week? Is that right? Oh, that's probably Medicare. That's probably Medicare. So let me tell you the difference. Medicare is the insurance that we've paid into throughout our lives as we worked so that we can get medical insurance when we turn 65 and older. Before Medicare, nobody would let us have insurance once we turned 65. We were all out-of-pocket pay. Now we have Medicare, which pays for a lot, but not everything. Now, I don't know why they took this other program and named it so closely, but it's called Medicaid. And And this program will help you pay for the nursing home. So in the situation that I talked to you about, and Lisa talked to you about, where it's $8,000 to $10,000 a month to go to the nursing home, I don't have that kind of money. I don't know if you guys do or not, but my money's not going to last long if one of us has to go to the nursing home. So there's this benefit called Medicaid that will help pay the difference between our income and what it costs to go to the nursing home. Now, the reason that you would want to do that is because you didn't save throughout your life, or at least I don't think you did. Did you save throughout your life so you could give that money to the nursing home? When you were saving money and putting it away, you weren't saying, ooh, let me put this over in this bucket so I can give it to the nursing home later? Anybody ever say they wanted to go to the nursing home? No, I've never met anybody that wanted to go to the nursing home. I've never met anybody that wanted to save for the nursing home. We saved it because we were going to do something fun, or we were going to leave it to take care of our family or pass on to the kids. And personally, I'm not all that worried about passing anything on to my kids. If there's something left, that's fine, but I'm hoping I spend all of it on fun stuff before we get to that point. But with Medicaid, they look at what assets you have. And if you own a home, then they want to come and take the equity out of your home. A lot of people will talk about them wanting to take your house. They don't want to take your house, but they sure want the equity out of it. If my husband was to go to the nursing home, he's only allowed to have $2,000 in his name. As long as we're still married and I'm still alive, between the two of us, we can have up to $130,000. That's counting our life insurance, that's counting our car, money in the bank, everything we own, up to $130,000. If we have $200,000 and we need to go to the nursing home, we have to spend $70,000 at the nursing home before Medicaid will help us pay for it. Again, that's not what we saved for. So that isn't how we want that to go. So we've got a few options. We can make sure that we have a family member that is going to take care of us, and hopefully they can take care of us throughout the remainder of our lives. Or we need to do some planning so that we have enough money to pay for the nursing home throughout our lives, if that ever comes into our journey. Or we need to plan for Medicaid to help us pay. There's one other option called long-term care insurance. Anybody got long-term care insurance? Very smart, very smart. I have seen that that makes a complete difference in the quality of life as we age. But unfortunately, as soon as you have any kind of illness, you can't go get it anymore. So most of us, I can't get it anymore. But if you have it, keep it. I know the prices keep going up, but keep paying it because it's worth every penny. So 4 ways to pay for the nursing home. 1 is out of your pocket. 2 is to have your children take care of you so you don't have to pay, or another family member. 3 is you can qualify for Medicaid, or 4 is long-term care insurance. So those are your options. If you want to protect some assets, you need to get those assets into an asset protection trust. You can't wait till the last minute because Medicaid is very familiar with that. You can't transfer things to your children because they're very familiar with that. You need to put it into a trust. That's how it's protected. And it needs to be in there 5 years before it's fully protected from the nursing home. Any questions on that? Yes, ma'am.
Does that work with a living trust, or does it have to be a non-revocable?
It has to be an asset protection trust. A living trust helps you avoid probate court, which is a beautiful thing. I want you to do that. The asset protection trust protects assets and avoids probate court.
Okay. Is there any maximum amount that you put into one of these asset protection ones that Medicaid wasn't going to come after you? Assuming you do the 5-year
Yeah, I've never had anybody that there was a maximum. Most of my clients are not, multimillionaires or anything.
None of us are either.
Yeah. So I've never seen anybody that, was in that position. So we've been able to save. I'll just tell you a family the other day that it's a husband and wife. They've been married for, I guess they're in their late 80s, and they've been married for over 60 years. And he had to go to the nursing home. And looking at what that is going to cost them for him to live the remainder of his life in the nursing home, plus what they're going to take out of their assets, is going to be about $743,000. So if they had come to us 5 years ago, we could have protected them from that $743,000.
Sort of related, what if you need, for living, you need, that 700,000 that's in your asset thing, but you've run out of all your other money, can you have your son give you some of that?
I can, thank you, that's a great question. So her question was, let's say that I put $100,000 into my trust and I've got my house in there. But my car's on its last leg, so now I'm gonna have to go buy a new car. And we know you can't buy a new car for under $40,000, I don't think, anymore. And so I'll have to go to my son and say, hey, I need a new car, and I can't afford to get it out of my income and the money that I've saved, so I need you to give me the money to go buy the new car. And yes, everything in that trust is for my benefit. I just can't have the keys to that treasure chest.
With regard to asset protection trust, are there certain things that can't go into an asset protection trust?
Another great
And
question.
also, what about like pension and Social Security income? Does that, if you make a certain amount, does that preclude you from taking or looking into Medicaid?
So 2 questions. The first one was something you can't put into the trust. There are things you don't need to put in the trust. So I wouldn't want you to put like your IRA or 401k into the trust. The reason being that Medicaid's not going to come after the principal that you have in there. So you don't want to put everything into the trust. The second question was, is there amount of income that you have that precludes you from being eligible for Medicaid? Well, if you make more money than it costs to be in the nursing home every month, then you don't need Medicaid. But again, I don't have clients that make that much income every month. So if you can make $8,000 to $10,000 a month in income, plus be able to cover all of your household expenses on your income, this isn't something you need to worry about. But if you don't make that much money, you might want to think about this. It's not for everybody, but it is for a lot of us. Most of us don't know about it. Have you ever heard this before? Yeah, that's how I got into this, is because I figured out, wait, I'm saving all my life, and then it's going away. But there's a way that I can protect it.
If you have an asset or something, can it be in more than one trust? Can you have 2 trusts?
Can you have 2 trusts? You can have as many trusts as you want, but you don't need more than one. If one is created correctly, it'll do everything you need, all in one. And if you're married, you and your spouse have the same one. So that's how my husband and I have it. And this is our second marriage. So another good reason to have a trust is that he had 2 children, I had 2 children. So we're a blended family. Now, I'm sure that he wants to make sure if something happens to him first, that I don't cut his children out. And I want to make sure if something happens to me first, that he doesn't cut my children out. So the trust can make that happen even after I've passed away.
My situation's a little unique. I was an only child, and I've never married, so I have no spouse, no children, no brothers, no sisters. what options would I have going forward?
You can adopt this table.
So the rest of us all think that you have a lot of money. So it doesn't have to be a child that is your trustee. It could be anybody you know. So even though it might not be a relative, you probably have some good friends here that could help you with that, or throughout your life. So we have a lot of people that don't have any children, but don't plan on somebody taking care of you would be my advice. They're not that good friends. If you bring in under $3,200 a month, you get to keep all your income. If you bring in $4,000 a month, you have what's called a patient liability. So you have to pay the difference between the $4,000 and the $3,216 that they let you keep. So I try to tell all my clients, as we're planning for the future, we need to be able to plan to live on $3,000 a month, because that is something that we might have to do someday. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that come in and they don't know that, and so they've run up a lot of monthly expenses, and then when you have to go to the nursing home, they don't care. You get to keep $3,216, whatever your income is. Unless it's less than that, then you get to keep it all up to $3,216.
Per person or per couple?
No, per couple.
Okay.
So the person that goes into the nursing home, they take their income and put it together. So it's per couple.
The basic income is the amount of money that's deposited in my check, my account every month. But over and above that, I have to put in rollover IRA money. Is that also counted as income?
It is.
You
That's
would,
that
yeah.
required minimum distribution. I don't make the laws. I'm just forewarning you about them. I just want you to know, because when you find out later down the road, it's really a little bit too late to do anything about it at that point. So I've had many people come in and say, look at my budget. I can't live on $3,000 a month. I have a $2,000 a month house payment. They don't care. Or look at this, and I'll look, and they're paying like, $300 a month for cable. Nobody cares. I mean, that's just the way it is. You're going to live on $3,216 or less per month, or you're not going to qualify for Medicaid. Just one second.
You made a statement earlier that your IRA principal wasn't being affected. I'm a little confused. So basically, if I had $50,000, that was my life savings in my IRA, that would just be ignored, other than my RMD, that would be ignored by Medicaid, and I could
They
just...
call it exempt,
So
but
I could
yes.
leave that there, and then my kids would get it later,
Yes.
and Medicaid wouldn't come after them later for it.
No, they just come after the required minimum distribution every year, not the principal. So you've got that right. If you have $50,000 in there, whatever amount you would get every year,
Yeah.
then you would have to take that, and that would be part of your income. And so it would be either under $3,216, or you would have to go to paying that to the nursing home. And if there's, the other $50,000 that's in there, they don't go after that. I had a question over here first.
Yes, suppose you have $5,000 of income. Can you break that down for us, what portion that they would be entitled to?
Yes, I can. So if you had $5,000 worth of income, let's say that I'm the one in the nursing home and my husband has $5,000 a month in income. I get to keep $70 a month. And so with that $70 a month, that's supposed to cover if I need a haircut, if I need Depends, if I need any kind of personal hygiene items, clothes, slippers, all of that stuff. Then that is out of my $70. So $5,000 minus 70 is $49.30.
Yeah.
Okay, so $49.30 left. I get to keep now, or my husband gets to keep $32.16. So the difference between the $49.30 and the $32.16 I have to pay to the nursing home every month. It's called patient liability.